नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल। अनसुनी द ट्रूथ अनहर्ड में आप सभी का खैर मकदम है। आज हम बात करने वाले हैं एक बुक के बारे में, एक ऐसी किताब जिसने कई सवालों का जवाब दिया है और साथ ही साथ कई सवाल भी खड़े किए हैं। जी हाँ, मैं बात कर रही हूँ एस.वाई. कुरैशी, जो कि हमारे फॉर्मर चीफ इलेक्शन कमीशन के हेड रहे हैं इंडिया के, और उनकी लिखी हुई एक ऐसी किताब जो कहीं ना कहीं आपको हमको झिंझोड़ के भी रख दे और कई लोगों के मुंह पे ताला भी लगा दे। द पॉपुलेशन मिथ, ये किताब जवाब है अपने आप में वो सारे मिथ्स का जो मुस्लिम्स के ऊपर आती थी, और ये कहा जाता था कि मुस्लिम्स की पॉपुलेशन हिंदूज को ओवरटेक कर लेगी, जिसके लिए सारे लीडर्स और कई सारे ग्रुप्स मुहिम चला रहे हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा पॉपुलेशन हिंदूज की बढ़े और मुस्लिम्स की कम हो। उन सारे चीज़ों के ऊपर ये जवाब है। ये जवाब है पूरे 70 सालों की पॉपुलेशन के हिसाब का। ये जवाब है आज तक की जितने भी चीज़ हुई हैं, जितने भी हिंदू मुस्लिम्स को अलग करने की, बांटने की कोशिश की गई है, पॉपुलेशन के नेम पे डर दिखा के कि हम आगे बढ़ जाएंगे, आपको कोई दूसरा हावी हो जाएगा आपके ऊपर, वो सारी चीज़ों का ये जवाब है। लेकिन साथ ही साथ कई सारे सवाल खड़ा करता है। सवाल खड़ा करता है कि आखिर हमारी पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल क्यों नहीं की जा रही है, क्यों एजुकेशन और सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट हेल्थ को, बजट को इतना कम रखा गया, क्यों किसी भी तरह की कॉन्ट्रासेप्टिव्स या कोई इस तरह की भी चीज़ों को और आम लोगों तक पहुंचाने की कोशिश नहीं की गई ताकि हर एक चीज़ आसान हो।
Harvard School of Public Health in 1993. Ms. Rao is the first to grow Harlem, Bundeland Senior Leadership Fellow at Harvard School of Public Health. Welcome, Madam Rao. Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India, PFI, Ms. Poonam Butreja has over 30 years of experience in the social development sector. Before joining PFI, she worked with the MacArthur Foundation India as country director, where she was responsible for the foundation's grants in India, which had a focus on population and development issues. She has been a member of the Family Planning 2020 reference group. Welcome, Ms. Butreja. Finally, the architect and the author of the work, Dr. Shahabidun Yaqub Qureshi, an Indian civil servant who served as 17th Chief Election Commissioner of India. He has also served as Secretary in the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. In October 2017, he was appointed Ambassador of Democracy by International IDAE, Institute of Democracy and Electoral Assistance, Stockholm, of which he is a board member. I once again welcome you all, Dr. Qureshi, all the eminent speakers and the audience who have joined us this evening, and request the chair, Shri Anil Vohra ji, to take the session forward. Over to you, sir.
Hot issue that the recently announced, at that time recently announced, certain steps to be taken for stabilization of population in all parts of the country, including Punjab, would have the following repercussions, and in so many years' time, the Sikh community will rule Punjab. They were already ruling Punjab, and the different parties come and go, and we had some very fine tall Sikh leaders from the Congress party. So it created some kind of fervor, it created some imbalance in the responses of the state, and all in all it didn't work positively in the interest of the state to be engaged in such debates. When years passed, after the emergency was going to end, and I leaves of the former ministers and civil servants who had allowed, organized, triggered all manner of coercion to be applied in the execution of family planning programs. And so great misdeeds of those times. The then minister had resigned just about the right time. The new government came, Janata government. My new minister was Mr. Rajnaran, who was very allergic to any word of English being spoken in his vicinity. And anybody who couldn't write Hindi very well and speak Hindi very well had no place in the ministry. So I thought my days are numbered and I would soon be back in Punjab where I belong. That, I'm mentioning Dr. Qureshi, that was a time when there was a very intensive debate on, again, the implications of what healthy steps were to be taken, required to be taken in national interest to stabilize the population growth. But this went on for a considerable period because coercion had been used. There was evidence of that in various places. So there was a total change in the setup of the ministry. Officers were thrown out, some were punished, some charged, and so on and so forth. Then for many, many years after that, I never heard the word family planning. In the political discourse, in the jargon, there was no reference at all, total quiet, as if this issue was of no great consequence. It continued to be of great importance because the rate of our national growth, of our population growth, obviously a very crucial element in our national planning, in our national development programs, in our regional growth, regional balances. But it would appear that the political mind, the polity, felt it is too hazardous now after the emergency experience to indulge in any kind of dialogue on demography. I retired. After retirement, I happened to have the privilege of working for this institution for many years. When I was working here, young Qureshi was a joint secretary in the government of India. And he happened to come to the library and I was going up and he wished me. I said, please come with me. And I said, look, the newspapers are full of all kinds of debate, that the minority community are opposed to family planning and this is a ploy of one of the not so secret weapons being used to ensure that the rate of growth of the minority community is kept under strict control and the majority community's interests are not injured in any way and so on and so forth. So do me a favor, why don't you spend a little time and with whomsoever you are free and who can be depended upon and help you. I want brief paper, 3, 4, 5 pages, what the Holy Quran adjudicates on this issue. Are there any mandates for or against? And what are the sayings of the caliphates, the wisdom of those all around the Prophet and the Prophet himself in his verbal conversations and his discourses. So he said, no, I am not equipped, I have no idea about this thing and I can't do what you asked. I said, please think about it and we would like to have a discussion around your paper in the ISC. After a couple of days, he rang me up, he said, all right, I will work for it, but it can't be 2-3 weeks. Then I didn't hear from him, but suddenly one day, he met me and he had a paper, very, very, very well worked upon, very well researched, very well expressed. And I remember in the committee room next to the President's office, Director's office, we had a very large gathering and he spoke with great conviction and great clarity to bring the factual position out before the audience of how the whole thing was being misrepresented and misinformation created around a very important subject which I am talking about the time Dr. Qureshi addressed gathering in the ISC. So I will not say very much more except to say that this book has come not too late, it's the right time. We still have large issues of where we go, and Sujata will tell us about the replacement rate and how there are regional imbalances even today when our TFR has gone down very significantly. What we need to do, what we don't. Every now and then we hear about the great differential we enjoy of the large quantum of youthful population. They call it the bulge, the youth bulge, and that how if you can deploy all that entire bulge into gainful employment, how the country will gain in per capita terms in GDP and how wealthy we will become and so on and so forth. So I will not be anecdotal. I will now request Dr. Qureshi. I believe he intends to give us a PowerPoint presentation. Would you like us to go down?
No, sir. You can see something.
Right, then I request Dr. Qureshi to please address us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll complete Mr. Vohra's story, but Ushaji will discount it from our presentation time. 2 minutes. I had applied for membership of IIC, and Mr. Vohra said that I'll give you the membership. 12 secretaries to Government of India, he said we have rejected. You are just a joint secretary, but I'll take you as a scholar, provided you prove it and you come and give us lecture. And as he said that I lived up to the promise I made, I wrote this paper. And my first ever lecture presentation was here over the library in the main hall, presided over by Mr. Vohra. And when we were entering the hall, there were only 5 people sitting there. And who was the famous the demographer, Mr. Ghosh, Dr. Ghosh, क्या नाम था उनका? Ashish Bose, हाँ. Professor Ashish Bose was to chair it, and he said कि कुरैशी तुमने नाम बड़ा गलत रखा है इसका family planning in Islam तुम्हें रखने चाहिए Islam and sex फिर लोग आ जाते हैं. So, but miracle क्या हुआ? Within 5 minutes the house was full and overflowing, and that is where I gave my first lecture. I had no intention of converting it into a book. The paper I wrote was very popular. UNFPA had actually asked me to write it, and they had offered me a consultancy of 1.5 lakh rupees. My salary was 5,000 rupees. It would have been a very tempting offer, but an inner voice said that I should not charge for it. I said, I'll do it gratis. So they said, free kya hota hai? We gave. He was a Canadian person. So we finally settled on a royal sum of 1 rupee. I said, I sound like a serious thing, and you write to me, I'll take Government of India's permission, and we will sign a contract, and then, and instead of 1 month, it took me 5 months, but it was worthwhile because I didn't do it full time. But what I found, it opened my eyes, and that was reflected. After that, all the lectures which I gave where honorarium is offered, I never took any honorarium. Now, let me tell you just one sentence on that, inner voice. 5 years down the line, when I was writing this paper, my friends were warning him because that was the time when Taslim Nasreen and Salman Rushdie were in the news and under threat. They said कि बेटा तुम्हारे भी वो हालत ना हो जाए, पेड़ लोग पिटाएंगे, तो carefully रखना. But I was not mischievous. I wrote the paper, which turned out to be acceptable to everybody. So people kept on asking me to. 5 years down the line, I was in London staying in a hostel with my daughter, where I got a phone call from somebody who introduced himself as another Dr. Qureshi, President of Muslim Doctors Association of UK. And he says, Mr. Qureshi, we have read your paper and we have certain issues. So I could see the tone was threatening. So fortunately, my flight was there next day for a flight back, and these guys landed up at the airport at 10 o'clock. There were 2 of them. And what they said, it still rings in my ears. They said, Mr. Qureshi, family planning is a Western conspiracy against Islam, and they hire mercenaries like you through this such papers. So fortunately, I had not taken any money, not even that 1 rupee, not yet taken. So I was able to bounce back on them. And of course, that's a long story. They never got back to me. So after that, I was under my friends were advising me that I should enlarge it into a book. Why it took 25 years? Not that it required that much of effort, because every time the book was about to be ready, there was new data coming in. NFHS, National Family Health Survey 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is based on NFHS 4. Fifth has also come, and I was in a hurry before fifth comes in, because every time then I have to go through my book again, because in case it changes my conclusion. Fortunately, every NFHS kept on reinforcing what I had found, and I'll take you through this. So can you take this, please? So let's start. Now, there are several myths being spread about the Muslim population in India, which are creating fear and hostility.
Actually, before you go further, he got his membership of the ISI.
And fully lived up to it, sir. Among the creating fear and hostility among the Hindus again. Actually, if there was no shortage of time, my friend Suhail Khan is sitting at the back. He has prepared a montage of video clippings which I have been receiving from all around. How soon they're all giving dates when the Muslims are becoming minority. 3 years, 5 years. In fact, one video says that in 2029 there will be a Muslim Prime Minister. So obviously it creates fear and anxiety. So I'm trying to find the answer. How soon will the Muslims be in power? Also, there are many other myths I'm dealing with through the book. Here I'm talking about only 5 of them. Number 1, that Muslims produce too many children and are solely responsible for the population explosion. My book starts with a confession. Yes, Muslims have the lowest family planning. And yes, they have the highest TFR, which is total fertility rate. And total fertility rate is the number of children a woman will produce in her lifetime. So in both, women are, Muslims are at the bottom. But the fact that Hindus are not far behind, they are number 2, with second lowest family planning, and 54, which is 54%, and second higher TFR, which is only half a child less than Muslim, is completely missed. Now, between 1951, which was the first census, till 2011, which was the last census, because the 2021 census could not happen, it has not yet started also. The net increase in Muslim population was 13 crores, and among the Hindus it was 67 crores. So much for Muslims overtaking the Hindus. Thus, a major contribution to population explosion came from the Hindus, as much as 5 times more than the Muslims. Well, let me first apologize. I am very, very embarrassed and ashamed to be talking about Muslim Hindu through this presentation, but this topic demands, it is totally unavoidable. Now, the gap between the Muslim and Hindu population, which was 26 crores then, is now 80 crores. Is that there any sign of overtaking? I can't see that. Myth number 2. Muslim population growth is upsetting the demographic balance. Yes, there has been a little skew in the demographic balance. In 1951, the Hindus were 84%, and they came down by 4.2% in 60 years. 4 percentage point in 60 years. This 4 percentage reduction was distributed over all communities, mainly the Muslims, which went up from 9.8 to 14.2. Right. Now, 4 percentage point in 60 years means, simple calculation, schoolboy arithmetic, that if it has taken in 4%, 60 years to increase 4 percentage point, how much will it take to increase 40%? Because 10 to 51% we require 40% increase, 600 years. It will take 600 years and surely not to 2029, a little beyond that. So 600 years is what it will take if nothing changes. But a lot is changing, which I'm going to show you now. Muslims are adopting family planning faster than the Hindus, much faster. As a result, the gap, by the way, the impression generally created was that if a Hindu family has 2 children, Muslims have 8 children or 10 children. I had that impression. Most of you may have had that impression. NFHS showed that the gap was never more than 1 child, 1.1 to be precise, 1 child, and that also has come down to less than half a child, 0.48, because Muslims are adopting family planning faster. Now this is the figure which represents the gap. 30 years ago that was the gap, now the gap has become half. Myth number 3. there is an organized conspiracy by Muslims to overtake the Hindus, to capture political power. They are about to succeed in a few years. And the fact is that I have not had any Muslim religious scholar or leader asking Muslims to produce more children to overtake the Hindus. We have surely heard the many ulama, many scholars saying don't do family planning because it is against Islam, but never for political reason. Which of course, even that myth is tried to break, because the perception that Islam is against family planning is total wrong, and I have proved it. Now, the clinching thing here, I requested Professor Dinesh Singh, I don't know whether he is here, former Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, a great mathematician, and he is a colleague of Professor Ajay Kumar together, to prepare a mathematical model. I sent him all the data. I said it will tell me at this rate how soon will Muslims overtake the Hindus. He made a mathematical model and he says, forget about it, never ever. And look at the graph. He said, this is what has happened in the last 70 years. The upper line is the growth of the Hindus, the bottom line is the growth of the Muslims. Are they overtaking or the gap is increasing? Then I asked them, look, this is what you have shown for the last 70 years. What about the next 100 years and 150 years? See that also. This is how it is going to look like after 150 years from now. The Hindus will be going northward and Muslims are at the bottom. This is how Muslims are overtaking the Hindus as per the propaganda. Now myth number 4. Muslims use polygamy for increasing population. ये 4-4 बीवियां कर लेते हैं ताकि ज्यादा बच्चे करें. बड़ा अच्छा आइडिया है 4-4 बीवी करना, लेकिन चौथी बीवी, दूसरी बीवी मिलेगी कहां से? You have all heard of the term gender ratio. What is gender ratio? The number of women for number of men born. For 1,000 men, gender ratio last year was 922. यानी 80 मर्दों के पास तो एक बीवी भी नहीं है. Of course, he will be a threat to your wife, so better be careful. Now, 80 लोगों के पास अगर पहली वाइफ भी नहीं है तो दूसरी तीसरी वाइफ मैं कहां से लाऊंगा? उसके बावजूद लीडर्स कहते हैं, बड़े बड़े लीडर, हम 5 हमारे 25, यानी मैं और मेरी 4 बीवियां मिला के मेरी 4 बीवियां यहाँ बैठी हुई हैं, इतनी मुख्तसर सी. तो हम 5 हमारे 25, या आजकल तो हम 4 हमारे 40. तो वो 4 कहाँ से आती हैं हमें तो पता नहीं. ये तो आ नहीं सकती. 2 डेमोग्राफर दाएं बाएं जो बैठे हैं वो बताएंगे कि पॉलीगेमी संभव कैसे हो सकती है. इट्स इम्पॉसिबल. Now there was a study of the government of India in 1975 on the status of women, and it found that all communities had some polygamy. And the least polygamous are the Muslims. Look at this chart. Tribals 15%, Buddhists, Jains, Hindus and Muslims. Muslims the least 5.7%. Now मुसलमान पॉलीगमी सबसे कम करता है, ये नहीं करता, लेकिन इस राइट के लिए लड़ने मरने को तैयार हो जाएगा. आप इसको बैन करने की बात करेंगे तो मैं और शायद सिद्दीकी सड़क पे शायद उतर जाए. लेकिन मैं तो कहता हूँ मुसलमानों को चाहिए कि बैन डिमांड करे, पॉलीगमी बैन कर दो. भाई तुम और आप, तुम और आप तो करते ही नहीं है. तो जब अगर हम ये डिमांड करेंगे तो जो करते हैं वो घबरा जाएंगे. आदित्य जैन, आप सोच लीजिए कि आप ज्यादा करते हो पॉलीगमी. Now, polygamy, as I said, is statistic law. Now, does Islam encourage polygamy? This is something we should understand. Most Muslims believe that it's a very preferred thing. It's a wrong perception. There is only one verse in the entire Quran of 6,000 verses which talks of polygamy. And the ayat goes like this. Allah is saying, you can marry 2, 3 or 4. ये सुन के मैं तो चला दौड़ के दूसरी शादी करने. लेकिन आगे क्या कह रहा है अल्लाह, ये रुके नहीं. वो आगे क्या कह रहा है कि provided you can treat them equally, which is a very difficult task, therefore marry only one. So therefore the conclusion is actually it is a permission and not an injunction. Permission with a condition of absolute equality, which God has himself has warned, that is very difficult. Now this is half the story. To my horror and surprise, I find the ulama also ignorant on this. There is a tougher condition before this. This verse was revealed on the Prophet. This was revealed on the Prophet in the context of orphans and widows. Allah is saying कि भाई orphans के साथ ये होते हैं, वो गरीब हो जाते हैं, डिपेंडेंट हो जाते हैं, इनके साथ इंसाफ करना, इनकी प्रॉपर्टी को हड़प न कर लेना, इनकी अच्छी चीज लेके बुरे से सब्स्टिट्यूट न कर देना, बल्कि अच्छा तो ये होगा तुम इनमें से 2 या 3 या 4 से शादी कर लेना, यानी उनसे तो शादी करके उनको इकोनॉमिक सिक्योरिटी देना। और इक्वालिटी का मतलब ये है कि आप ऐसे किसी ऑर्फन को या विडो को घर में लाके उसको तो किचन में बर्तन धोने के लिए भेज दीजिए, और जो आपकी बीवी है वो महारानी बन जाए। That is what Allah has warned against. If you can treat them equally, best is to marry them. That is the best economic security. This is the context. Therefore, conditions are 2. First, marry from among those widows. हिंदुस्तान टाइम पढ़िए, हर एक को इशू सबको वर्जिन चाहिए होती है. Everyone wants to marry a virgin. So यहाँ पे अल्लाह कह रहा है कि marry orphans and widows from among them, and that is the only permission. That is this foremost condition. Number 5. And last myth. Last in this presentation, not in the book. Is Islam against family planning? So nowhere has the Quran prohibited family planning. Whereas Quran has prohibited sharab, haram hai, interest lena haram hai, sex outside marriage haram hai, और God has said in one verse कि जो हमने तुम पे मना करना था, प्रोहिबिट करना था, वो हमने तुमको समझा दिया है. It cannot be anybody's case कि अल्लाह बताना भूल गया, फैमिली प्लानिंग के बाद बताना भूल गया, वरना उसको भी बैन करता. जो बताना था, बैन करना था, उसको बैन कर दिया. और खुद कह रहा है कि जो बैन करना था हमने बैन कर दिया. Which means whatever is not prohibited in the Quran is valid, जायज. So Quran फैमिली प्लानिंग पे कोई बैन नहीं. There are several verses जिसकी इंटरप्रिटेशन लोग करते हैं. कुछ फॉर जाती है, कुछ अगेंस्ट जाती है. Just to give example, सबसे ज्यादा जो अगेंस्ट फैमिली प्लानिंग की जाती है, एक वर्स है जब उस जमाने में अरब लोग, जाहिल लोग और लड़कियों को जब पैदा होती थी जिंदा दफन कर देते थे. जैसे कि आज भी फीमेल फीटिसाइड होता है, जिसपे पूनम जी आपको फिगर दे सकती हैं, वो आज हो रहा है 14,000 पहले. उसको वॉर्न करने के लिए अल्लाह ने कहा कि तुम पॉवर्टी की वजह से लड़कियों को दबा दे दो, जमीन में गाड़ दे दो, ऐसा न करो. अगर बच्ची पैदा होगी तो उसको खाना पीना, उसकी रोजी रोटी हम देंगे. लोगों ने उसको कि जितने पैदा करते चले जाओ, खुदा ने तो वादा किया. ये दिस वाज नॉट द पर्पस. सो इंटरप्रिटेशन फॉर एंड अगेंस्ट, आई हैव गिवन ऑल ऑफ देम फॉर एंड अगेंस्ट इन दिस. सो एक्चुअली इस्लाम तो इज द ऑथर ऑफ द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ फैमिली प्लानिंग. इसमें मैंने बहुत सारी आयतें और हदीसों में से एक आयत निकाली है कुरान की, और 2 हदीसें निकाली है जो which according to me clears the evidence for me. एक आयत है, let those who do not have the means for marriage keep themselves chaste until Allah gives them means out of His grace. Now Sujata will tell you, she was secretary family planning. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ये 21 साल 18 साल की एज क्यों बताया डिटरमिन किए? आर्टिफिशियल है, तो ये 25 भी हो सकती थी, 19 भी हो सकती थी. तो so that a boy is able to bring up a family, a girl is able to produce a child. So इसमें भी आयत ये कह रही है कि जब शादी जरूर करना, लेकिन उस वक्त जब तुमको अल्लाह मीज़ दे, साधन दे कि आप फैमिली को लुक आफ्टर कर सको. इसको सुन के एक लड़का हुजूर से, प्रॉफिट से लड़ने के लिए पहुंच गया. उसने कहा कि साहब ये आयत आई है, लेकिन मैं बहुत गरीब हूँ, लेकिन मेरे सेक्सुअल नीड्स तो मेरी भी हैं, मैं क्या करूँ? तो उसमें प्रॉफिट ने उसको रिपीट किया, ओ यंग मैन, दोज ऑफ यू हु कैन सपोर्ट अ वाइफ इन हाउसहोल्ड शुड मैरी. रीजन फॉर मैरिज कीप्स यू फ्रॉम लुकिंग विद लस्ट एट वुमेन एंड प्रिजर्व्स यू फ्रॉम प्रोमिस्क्यूटी. बट दोज हु कैन नॉट should take to fasting, which is a means of tempering sexual desire. के पोस्टपोन करो जब तक तुम इसलिए लायक हो जाते हो, और पोस्टपोन करने का तरीका है रोजा रखा करो. रोजे से सेक्सुअल डिजायर सप्रेस होती है. सब तरीका भी बता दिया. फाइनली जो क्लिंचिंग है, एक हदीस है, एक प्रॉफिट के पास एक शख्स गया कि मेरे कई बच्चे, मुझे और नहीं चाहिए। मैं अल अज़ल वाली विड्रॉल मेथड का अरबी नाम है अज़ल, मैं अज़ल करना चाहता हूँ ताकि और बच्चे ना हो। तो लेकिन एक जू ये कहता है कि वो तो माइनर इन्फेंटिसाइड है, यू आर किलिंग द स्पर्म, तो हाउ कैन यू डू दैट? तो उस पर प्रॉफिट ने कहा कि नहीं, जू ने गलत कहा, जू ने गलत कहा, यानी विड्रॉल मेथड नाजायज नहीं है, बिल्कुल ठीक है। तो तरीका भी अप्रूव हो गया, विच इज प्रीकर्सर ऑफ कॉन्डोम। देन आजकल के जो मॉडर्न मेथड है उसका पुराना तरीका। That's why, in fact, Islam is the pioneer of the concept of family planning. And Professor Abdul Rahman Al-Azhar has said it's a wonder to the thinkers of today that Islam should give so much importance to child spacing and family planning so early in human history, in the absence of compelling population pressure. 1400 साल पहले कोई पॉपुलेशन का प्रेशर नहीं था, उस वक्त फैमिली प्लानिंग स्पेसिंग की बात उसमें हो रही है। और बहुत सारी आयतें हैं, 2 महीने 2 साल की ब्रेस्ट फीडिंग वगैरह वगैरह। Now 2-3 slides more. It is not a Hindu versus Muslim issue at all. Fertility, actually the determining factors are literacy, income and service delivery. The more the literacy of, particularly of girls, the lesser the number of children across communities. The more the income, lesser the children. Better the services, lesser the children. इन तीनों में मुसलमान सबसे बैकवर्ड है। तो हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी साहब बैठेंगे, ये बताएंगे कि इन्होंने मुसलमान तक पहुंचने की क्या कोशिश की, उनको सर्विसेज देने की क्या कोशिश की, लिटरेसी की उनकी बात की, इनकम की। आजकल तो हम ये सुनते हैं कि मुसलमानों से बिजनेस न करना, उससे सब्जी न खरीदना। कर्नाटक में कल परसों था कि वो कुंभ वहाँ पे हो रहा है कि वहाँ पे मुसलमान को दुकान नहीं देंगे। अरे भाई, दुकान नहीं दोगे, वो बेचारा और गरीब होगा और बच्चे पैदा करेगा, तो फिर हमको तकलीफ होगी। तो 25 स्टेट ऐसी हैं 29 में से जहां पे मुसलमानों की फैमिली प्लानिंग बिहार के हिंदुओं से अच्छी है ना। इससे क्या मतलब बिहार के हिंदुओं से और या यूपी के उसमें दैट शोज कि अगर रिलीजन वाज अ फैक्टर इन नन ऑफ द स्टेट्स मुस्लिम विल बी प्रैक्टिसिंग फैमिली प्लानिंग। बिहार के हिंदू बैकवर्ड हैं लिटरेसी में, इनकम में। उन 25 स्टेट के मुस्लिम बेटर ऑफ हैं, तो दे आर प्रैक्टिसिंग फैमिली प्लानिंग। और देयर इज नो हिंदू रेट वर्सेस मुस्लिम रेट, बिकॉज़ देयर इज अ रेंज। आप मुस्लिम की रेंज तमिलनाडु में 1.74, सो बिहार में 4.11। हिंदुओं की रेंज भी केरला में 1.42 है, तो बिहार में 3.29। तो इस रेंज में किस चीज को, किसको आप मुस्लिम रेट और हिंदू रेट कहेंगे? तो ये रिलीजन इज नॉट अ फैक्टर। इस ग्राफ में आप देखेंगे, बड़े एक्सप्रेसिव ग्राफ है। एज द लिटरेसी गोज अप, द नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन गोज डाउन। अनपढ़ के 3 बच्चे हैं, 12वीं क्लास वाले का 1.7 है। एजुकेशन ऑल्सो डिलेज मैरिज। अनपढ़ के अगर की 17 साल में अगर शादी हो रही है, तो 12वीं क्लास वाले की 22 साल में। इस 5 साल की डिलेड मैरिज ने मिलियंस ऑफ बर्थ्स बचा दिए। तो लिटरेसी की बात कीजिए। इनकम, सबसे गरीब के 3 बच्चे हैं तो सबसे अमीर के 1.6। सर्विस डिलीवरी, ये जो है, जो 3 चीज जो बताए सोशो इकोनॉमिक फैक्टर, इसमें मुसलमान कहाँ पे, बॉटम पे। ना इन ग्राफ में एक आपको एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज नजर आएगी। ग्रीन इंडिकेट मुस्लिम लिटरेसी ऑफ मेन लीस्ट अमंग मुस्लिम, वुमेन लीस्ट अमंग मुस्लिम। लेकिन आप ये देखेंगे कि शोल्डर टू शोल्डर आर हिंदूज, द राइट बिहाइंड आर हिंदूज। दिस इज समथिंग व्हिच कम्स आउट थ्रू दिस स्टडी, दैट दे आर एक्चुअली इन द सेम बोट। ये वर्कर पॉपुलेशन मुसलमानों की सबसे कम, एंटीनेटल केयर लोएस्ट अमंग द मुस्लिम, फॉलोड बाय द हिंदूज, अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर लोएस्ट अमंग द मुस्लिम, followed by Hindus, advice on family planning lowest for Muslim. Now, what is there? Then I'm trying to see there is a chapter on what is the family planning status among Muslim countries in the world. 10 countries I've examined. The most conservative Muslim country, Iran, has the best family planning in the world. वहाँ तो इस्लाम का किसी ने नहीं उठाया कि वो इस्लाम उसके खिलाफ है, इस्लाम के किसी मुल्ला की हिम्मत नहीं हुई कि उसको अपोज करे, सबने सपोर्ट किया। इंडोनेशिया में, ईरान में, बांग्लादेश में मस्जिदों में फ्राइडे प्रेयर में फैमिली प्लानिंग की बात करते हैं। तो क्यों ना हम अपने उलमा को वहाँ भेज के भेजें कि वो सीख के आए, या वहाँ के उन लोगों को बुलाएं कि हमारे लोगों को सिखाओ। ये जो मैंने आपको बताया, डेटा दिया था। अब पॉलिटिकल प्रोपेगेंडा जो है कि हिंदू राइट विंग अपील करता है हिंदुओं से कि तुमको 8 बच्चे पैदा करने चाहिए वरना मुसलमान आगे निकल जाएंगे। फॉर्चुनेटली किसी हिंदू ने उनको सीरियसली नहीं लिया, वरना तो ये प्रोक्रिएशन वॉर अगर शुरू होती तो बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो जाती। Now reality, they are in the same boat. National population policy की जो targets है we have achieved already 5-7 years late, but we have achieved प्यार से। लोग चाइना की बात करते थे, उसी चाइना ने 1 child पॉलिसी 2016 में अबैंडन कर दी। इस हद तक वो की फिर उन्होंने 2 child नॉर्म किया 2019 में, उसको करके अब 3 child नॉर्म पे चाइना आ गया। हम चाइना का नाम लेते लेते बड़े हो गए 30 साल। वही तो फेलियर कि हमने जो रियल डायग्नोसिस नहीं किया, जो सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डिटर्मिनेंट्स है उसकी बात नहीं की, उसको एड्रेस नहीं किया। और सुजाता, ये जो आपके लिए मैंने आपके उस वक्त की ज्वाइंट सेक्रेटरी को चिट्ठी लिखी कि भाई तुम मुसलमानों को एड्रेस करने के लिए कुछ क्या एफर्ट किए आपने? उन्होंने कहा नहीं हम हिंदू मुस्लिम में कोई फर्क नहीं करते। नाउ व्हाट मे साउंड लाइक अ पॉलिटिकली करेक्ट स्टेटमेंट in professional communication is a very silly statement, because there are target audiences. Is a segment of audience which is resistant to family planning, like Muslims were and even to some extent are. You have to address them. वो कहते हैं मेरा मजहब इसके खिलाफ है, तो आप चुप होकर बैठ जाएंगे। उसका जवाब हमें रिसोर्स बुक होनी चाहिए थी, हमको ट्रेनिंग देनी चाहिए थी स्टाफ को कि नहीं तुम झूठ बोल रहे हो, ये नहीं इस्लाम तो ये कहता है। तो ये हमने नहीं किया, उस वजह से वो डिफरेंशियल था। फाइनली वोहरा साहब ने एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात बताई, जो इमरजेंसी के दौरान जो फोर्सफुल फैमिली प्लानिंग हुई थी उसका बैकलैश, उस बैकलैश को अभी 6-7 साल पहले एक कमेटी बनी मेरी अध्यक्षता में नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर ने, कि पॉलिटिशियन का एटीट्यूड क्या है फैमिली प्लानिंग पे। नोबडी वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट फैमिली प्लानिंग। हमने 20 साल के पार्लियामेंट के क्वेश्चन एनालाइज किए, 13वीं 14वीं 15वीं 16वीं लोकसभा के 20 साल के लाखों क्वेश्चन में से सिर्फ 0.15% क्वेश्चन वर ऑन फैमिली प्लानिंग। बात करते थे डरते। यहाँ मैं मुसलमान आपको कह रहा हूँ फैमिली प्लानिंग की बात किया करो, फैमिली प्लानिंग इन्फोर्स करो, फैमिली प्लानिंग प्रमोट करो, तो लेकिन नेता लोग नहीं करते। अब एक फाइनली फिर मैंने कहा भाई रिसोर्स ग्रुप बनाओ, फेथ लीडर्स को इन्वॉल्व करो, पॉपुलेशन को पॉलिसी को इन्फोर्स करो, और लेकिन मिलजुल के करो, जो फॉल्स प्रोपेगेंडा है उसको डिस्पेल करो। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Lovely.
Then the sex ratios in other communities, not just Hindu, all communities. And the data demonstrates that fertility is correlated again to education, which you rightly said, education, incomes and the services that are available. Now, something that we all know in all health services, it's not just family planning. If you look at maternal health, if you look at immunization rates, it depends on where you live, which wealth quintile you are in. You get services accordingly, and the famous in India fact that we keep repeating and do very little. Last mile, the most difficult to reach areas, tribals, religious minorities, as well as the Dalits. But it also is a fact that if you look at health workers, you will have a very much lower percentage of Dalits, Muslims in amongst the Ashas, the ANMs, who are the frontline health workers, who reach services like family planning, maternal health, and so on to the community, and we have not done very much about that. Data also demonstrates that in NFHS 4, fertility rates from religious groups, 4 religious groups, vary between states, and you alluded to, you've written about it in your book, but I mean, I do want to say that Hindu women in UP and Bihar have many more, have a much higher fertility rate than Hindu women in Kerala. But if you look at the Muslims in Kerala, it is one state along with many other states where you have minus fertility rates amongst Muslims. Muslim women in southern states have lower fertility than Hindu women in the northern states, and the fertility rate amongst Muslim women in Kerala is, and not just Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Kerala is 1.8, Tamil Nadu is 1.7, lower than the fertility rates amongst Hindu women in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So Kerala, a Muslim-dominated state, has managed to bring down TFR with adequate investments in health, education and health services. And that is a fact for across the world and the country and India, across India. So when we talk about a two-child norm, in many states, Assam already has a two-child norm. Political perception that there is a need for a two-child norm there. UP talked about a two-child norm, but had, for political purposes, the rhetoric talking about a two-child norm and coercive population policies, but did the most. Actually, what they passed is a women's empowerment approach family planning policy. Simultaneously, this was done. So there is the politics and there is the real issues. And why is it that a state like UP, in spite of all the political rhetoric that dominated the discourse, the reason they have a very progressive population policies thanks to the bureaucracy. You know, the bureaucracy in India on one issue, I would like to say, has steadfastly, whether it is at the national level or at the state level, and I remember working with Sujata Rao when she was health secretary, she, against every, a lot of the media and feminists were against bringing greater choice where injectables and so on were concerned. Sujata was one of the bravest bureaucrats, even where politicians refused to talk about introducing methods which feminists and journalists together collectively were against. But it is not only Sujata Rao, if I may say so. I have seen even today's bureaucracy across states, they are very aware of demographics. They are very aware of what is needed to be done. This is one issue. People are well informed, and the bureaucracy I want to defend here. And if you remember, when I talked about politicians, academics, and others, I didn't mention bureaucracy in that list of people who believe in the myths and misconceptions. And I have seen in many states the bureaucracy is responsible.
Really very nice that I'm sitting here today next to him and talking about family planning. Dr. Qureshi's book is a masterly book. I mean, I just read it. I got it a few days ago, and I had read it before, but I was reading it again. And it's amazing how much of the data is a perception that can only be countered with data and evidence. That's the only way. By my as a Hindu saying, yes, you will overtake us, and him saying, no, we will not take us, doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense when you look at data in its full and comprehensive manner in which he has presented. And I think it's very important. Of course, in this case, you know as well as I do, it is not lack of knowledge of the data that these statements and this perception is being deliberately fostered. It has far-reaching other political implications. So, you know, there is that kind of thing. But yet, I think those who need to fight this kind of perception, which can only be divisive in the long run, is by looking at data and putting it all together. There are a huge number of books written on population stabilization efforts in India and so on, but very few, there are, but very few that I have come across which deal with it from the
more than 2 or 3 of the women, because during those wars before Islam was established, there were something like 3,000, 4,000 of the so-called Muslims dying every day in battle. During the advent of Islam, there was a struggle. So that the ladies who were actually widows now would not fall into destitution and prostitution and be ignored and go through other forms of hell. The Prophet, in his the compassion for their future, said that they can be that the men can marry as many as 4 wives, provided, yes, they love them equally. But the reason behind the extra marriages was not to have marital marriages, but to protect their future so they don't go into prostitution. That was the reason. And destitution. Is that a fact? And I only imagine it.
ये मैंने कहा था before you came exactly मैंने बता दिया था.
Oh, you had. I'm sorry. I was a bit late. Sorry. Forgive me.
I'm Zakia Khan. I'm national spokesperson for Urma Board. So, I had a question with Poonam ji. In fact, I want to quote her. Like she's told that the budgets are very low for health. Sujata ji told, even for the education, the budget this time has come extremely low. And at this category, how we can imagine that the girls who has to come out into the field of education and going to be empowered with this budgeting, I don't think so. This point has to be taken from PFI as well as from you, ma'am, Sujata ji, even from Vohra ji, to the parliamentary and to the ministries, because they are decreasing the main issues of health and educational budget, which is very important. The second thing, like Poonam ji quoted that Qureshi ji has told that that women age should be 18 and the boy's age should be 21 at the time. It was mentioned in the Quran. It was mentioned according to the Quran, that movement, that period. It is never mentioned that you should carry on that particular things till the end of your universe. It was at that particular time. The exemption was taken according to that. So this was the two things what I really wanted to quote. And I think some NGO or something can help us to bring this book as well as the theory of contraceptives and other birth control to the ground level, because whatever we are talking in the chamber. That is really not doing in the field, it's not working. Even the book which you have written, I think it has to come out in all the madrasas and masjid as well, so that the ulma speaks about it. That is very important. Like Mr. Vohra told that it should be translated in Urdu. That's very true, and it has to be available there. Thank you.
I'm happy to say Urdu translation and